I never thought I'd see the day when my morning walks by the marsh would turn into a war. For 15 years, I lived in Willow Creek Estates without much drama. My wife, Laura, and I bought a modest house on the outer edge after our kids moved out, seeking something quieter, away from the city grind. When she passed 4 years ago, those morning walks became my anchor. Every dawn, I'd follow the dirt path from my backyard to the cattail-lined marsh. Watch the egrets stalk minnows, breathe in the damp smell of reeds and mud. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. The trouble began when Evelyn Carter moved in. She was the type who arrived like a parade, brand new Lexus, manicured nails, a smile that could cut glass. She claimed she wanted to give back to the community, but everyone could tell she wanted to run it. Within weeks, she convinced a handful of neighbors to form a homeowners association. She called it a necessary step to protect property values. I called it the end of peace. The first letter came on thick cardstock with embossed lettering, announcing new mandatory HOA dues of $250 a month. My jaw tightened as I read phrases like common property stewardship and mandatory compliance. The marsh path I walked every day, my sanctuary, was now listed as private HOA property, members only. I crumpled the letter and tossed it straight into the trash. 2 days later, Evelyn was standing at my gate in a pastel blazer, clipboard in hand, acting like she was conducting a census. "Mr. Hayes," she said, smiling too hard, "I noticed you haven't submitted your HOA enrollment." "I'm not interested," I replied. "That marsh path runs through my deed. Been walking it since we bought the house." Her eyes cooled instantly. "That's a misunderstanding. The marshland is a community asset. Everyone must contribute." "I don't have assets. I have memories," I said, then shut the gate. From then on, the war began. Laminated signs went up overnight, private HOA property members only. I ignored them and kept walking the marsh. The next morning, I noticed Evelyn in her bay window, snapping photos with a telephoto lens, like I was some kind of intruder. By the following week, I was served a notice of violation for trespassing. I wasn't the only target. Old Mr. Larson, who kept a vegetable patch, got fined for unauthorized agricultural activity. The Simmons family, who built a treehouse for their grandkids, were cited for unapproved structures. Even the Martins down the road were accused of aesthetic violations because their shutters hadn't been repainted in the HOA's approved color palette. Evelyn strutted door to door in her designer heels, handing out fines like she was the sheriff of a one-horse town. I knew better than to fight her on her battlefield. Instead, I drove down to the county clerk's office. The smell of dust and old paper hit me the moment I walked in. A clerk named Dan pulled out the original plats of Willow Creek. He adjusted his glasses and tapped the map. "See here? That marsh path isn't community property. It was excluded from subdivision covenants. Belongs to your lot, actually. Runs clean through it." I felt a grin tug at my lips. "So all this noise about trespassing? Hot air," he said. "She's got no authority unless you give it." I walked out clutching certified copies like they were golden tickets. Evelyn could dress up her HOA in all the buzzwords she wanted, but she was bluffing. Trouble was, she didn't know it yet. The harassment escalated. A rent-a-cop security guard appeared at the marsh entrance, snapping photos of me every morning. Evelyn filed noise complaints about my lawnmower, health code violations about my septic tank. I received a letter from a law firm, demanding $500 in administrative fees for failure to comply with HOA standards. I laughed so hard, I nearly dropped it in my coffee. But not everyone was laughing. One evening, Mrs. Simmons knocked on my door, her hands trembling. She held out a notice demanding daily fines until the treehouse came down. "That's for our grandkids," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "I can't afford this." That's when I knew it wasn't just about me. Evelyn was bullying the whole neighborhood, banking on fear and confusion. Someone had to push back. I hired a surveyor. A wiry guy named Trent with a laser scanner and the patience of a saint. He spent hours marking boundary stakes along my property. "Hayes," he said finally, pointing at his equipment, Your lot extends 30 feet into that marsh. Anyone trying to restrict your access? They're trespassing on you. That night, as I studied the survey maps by lamplight, I found something else. Language in my deed referencing perpetual riparian rights. I didn't know what that meant, so I called Dan at the courthouse. He chuckled. Means you not only own the land leading to the marsh, you've got usage rights to the water itself. Fishing, walking, maintaining access, it's yours by law. I leaned back, the weight of weeks lifting off me. Evelyn wasn't just wrong, she was trespassing on me. She doubled down anyway. She organized a flashy community safety meeting in her living room, complete with a PowerPoint presentation about unregulated marsh access. I wasn't invited, but word got around. She told neighbors she had legal authority to enforce fines, that non-compliant residents like me were a danger to property values. She even passed around a petition to present at the next county commissioner meeting, demanding recognition of the Willow Creek HOA as the official managing body of the marsh. Perfect. Let her build her stage. In the days leading up to the meeting, I gathered evidence, certified deeds, survey maps, copies of every bogus violation notice. The Simmonses and the Larsons agreed to testify. Even Trent, my surveyor, volunteered to attend. Dan promised to bring tax records showing I'd paid levies on the marshland every year. The night of the county meeting, Evelyn swept in with her entourage like a corporate CEO ready to conquer. They wore matching navy blazers and carried thick binders. She clicked her heels to the podium and delivered a polished speech about protecting our investments. She flashed photos of me on the marsh path like I was a criminal. She waved her petition with its 40 signatures. We must act, she declared. Without the HOA, our property values will plummet. Applause from her side, cameras flashing. She smiled like victory was already hers. Then the commissioner asked if anyone had an alternative perspective. I stood, folder in hand, and walked to the podium. My work boots echoed on the tile. Evelyn's smile faltered just slightly. Commissioners, I said, calm as stone, I'd like to clarify ownership of that marshland. I laid the deed on the desk, county seal shining under the fluorescent lights. This document, dated 1985, conveys the marsh path and adjoining land to my property. I've paid taxes on it every year since. Certified copies are included here. Whispers rippled through the room. Evelyn sat up straighter, her face whitening. I continued, pulling out Trent's survey maps. A licensed surveyor confirmed my boundary extends into the marsh. Furthermore, my deed includes riparian rights, meaning I have lawful use of the water and access path. The HOA has no authority over this land. I handed the maps to the commissioners. One leaned forward, eyebrows raised. So you're saying the HOA has been charging fees for land it doesn't own? Exactly, I said. Every fine, every threat, every violation notice. They've all been attempted extortion of property rights they don't control. At that moment, Evelyn sprang to her feet. That's not possible. We researched. There's no private claim. From the back, Dan rose. Commissioners, Dan Whitaker from County Records. Mr. Hayes is correct. He owns that marshland outright. The HOA never filed incorporation papers with the county, so legally it has no authority. The room erupted in gasps. Evelyn's supporters exchanged panicked looks. One man in a blazer muttered, "She said it was all official," and quietly slipped out the door. The commissioners called a recess. 10 minutes later, they returned with their verdict. The Willow Creek HOA had no authority to regulate the marsh or levy fees. All structures and signs erected on my property must be removed immediately. Any attempt to fine residents for non-existent violations would be referred for investigation as harassment. Evelyn's face flushed crimson. She tried to speak, but the gavel cut her off. The meeting adjourned. Outside, neighbors surrounded me, relief plain on their faces. Mrs. Simmons hugged me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You saved us," she whispered. Mr. Larson clapped me on the back, grinning for the first time in months. Even the Martins brought coffee the next morning as thanks. Within a week, the laminated signs vanished. The security guard disappeared. Evelyn's decorative fence across the marsh path was torn down under county order. Her HOA crumbled overnight as members withdrew. The grand empire she built out of fear dissolved like sugar in rain. 2 weeks later, a for sale sign appeared in front of her house. By the next month, she and her Lexus were gone. The new owners were a young couple who cared more about bird watching than bylaws. Peace returned to Willow Creek. The Marsh path was open again, not because I granted permission, but because it had always belonged here, free for anyone who respected it. We organized a cleanup day, neighbors working side by side to clear debris, laughing like we hadn't in years. I even carved a simple wooden sign at the marsh entrance. Welcome to Willow Creek Marsh. Respect nature, respect each other. The irony was rich. Evelyn had tried to control everything in the name of property values. In the end, her tyranny only lowered her own. What she never understood was that community isn't built on rules and fines, it's built on respect. Now, every dawn, I still walk that path. The cattails sway in the breeze, egrets stalk the shallows, and the marsh breathes with the same quiet rhythm it always has. Sometimes neighbors join me. We don't talk much. We don't need to. The peace speaks for itself. And when I think back on those long months of battles and meetings, I realize the truth Evelyn never saw. Some fights aren't about winning. They're about reminding bullies that no matter how loud they shout, they can't take what was never theirs to begin with.